Hi all, this is Simona Rich, and in this video I will again read out the quotes of Nisargadatta Maharaj from his book I Am That, together with my commentary. Today is a very quiet day, hopefully nothing, no sound, like no birds or people would start chirping or talking when I'm recording. Then hopefully the sound will be good. I don't know where I left it off. I guess from here. How am I to practice desirelessness? The answer of Maharaj: no need to practice, no need of any act of renunciation. Just turn your mind away, that is all. Desire is merely the fixation of the mind on an idea. Get it out of its groove by denying it attention. So he doesn't recommend pushing it away, because energy channeled into it may actually increase it, but just turn away from your desires, because indeed it's just the fixation of the mind. Be entirely self-determined and ruled from within, not without. Now he's talking about desires and fears. They are entirely mind-made. You have to give up everything. To know that you need nothing, not even your body, you need to give up everything. Your needs are unreal and your efforts are meaningless. You imagine that your possessions protect you. In reality, they make you vulnerable. Realize yourself as away from all that can be pointed out as this or that. You are unreachable by any sensory experience or verbal construction. Turn away from them. Refuse to impersonate. So here he says that our needs are not real, that they are imagined, because this whole experience is actually in our imagination and not true. And when we turn away from that, when we deny that which is we witness, because what perishes, what changes is not us, then eventually we will understand our true nature. Nothing compels me. I do what needs doing, but you do so many unnecessary things. It's your refusal to examine that creates karma. It is the indifference to your own suffering that perpetuates it. So he's explaining that when something needs to be done, it just gets done. But he's not engaged in his mind and following thoughts. But he's simply, when he's in the present moment and when something needs to be done, naturally the body does it. Whilst people who are not liberated, they allow the mind to talk them into doing so many things because of the desires and fears that it has. Now he's talking about knowledge. Leave it all behind you. Forget it. Go forth unburdened with ideas and beliefs. Abandon all verbal structures, all relative truth, all tangible objectives. The absolute can be reached by absolute devotion only. Don't be half-hearted. So here he is talking that even knowledge will have to be left behind, because sometimes people get into the habit of always acquiring it because of the mind's obsessions. So it just wants more and more and more. So the acquisition of knowledge becomes a disease, and it's especially prevalent in the Western world, not so much in places like India or here in Nepal. People still are in touch with nature, but in the Western world, people are all in their minds and just consume information. But there comes a stage when even knowledge will have to be left behind, because it just keeps engaging the mind. And also here he explains that if you are partial about liberation, you cannot achieve it, but when you lose interest in everything, even acquisition of knowledge, then you can indeed become liberated. Liberation is never of the person. It's always from the person. Maybe I will cover this microphone. I hear some people talking. Okay, maybe now it's going to be better. I love this quote. Liberation is never of the person, it's from the person, to get liberated from the person. Because still people imagine themselves getting liberated and still they imagine themselves in the body experiencing it, whilst actually liberation is just from this illusion, from the personality, from this world. So it's not even about the person. And it's so difficult to understand because we are so attached to our bodies, but complete liberation is even from the body, from the mind, from personality, from this entire world. Break the bonds of memory and self-identification, and the shell will break by itself. Break the bonds of memory, and there comes a stage when you use memory less and less, when you progress spiritually. And now I'm thinking, Nisargadatta says there is no actually progress, but since we are in time, we perceive it as progress. So there comes a time when you no longer rely on memory, but you're more and more in the present, and it can be scary because before you used to plan, you used to think about what happened in the past and base your actions on that. Yet there comes a stage when memory loses importance and you just act from the moment. Break the bonds of memory and self-identification, and the shell will break by itself. Bonds of memory and self-identification, being identified with this body. And if you do that, if you're just present, it's so strange. I don't know if you can hear. I just came here to record and it was totally quiet, and now someone near the gate starts loudly speaking. It always happens. It's just crazy. I hope you can hear it, and I hope that person will go away. So here he says that self-identification and memory are the obstacles, and when you just turn away from these things, then you can naturally become liberated. There is a center that imparts reality to whatever it perceives. All you need is to understand that you are the source of reality, that you give reality instead of getting it, that you need no support and no confirmation. Things are as they are because you accept them as they are. Stop accepting them and they will dissolve. Just don't pay attention to what's happening to phenomena, because interest in that keeps us in bondage. Whatever you think about the desire or fear appears before you as real. Look at it without desire or fear and it does lose substance. Look at everything in the same way, and then it will lose the meaning that you imparted on it before. Pleasure and pain are momentary. It's simpler and easier to disregard them than to act on them. It is indeed simpler and easier to disregard these things, and then we help ourselves to get liberated if we do that. Question: while we are conscious of appearances, how is it that we are not conscious that these are mere appearances? Answer: the mind covers up reality without knowing it. The mind covers up reality without knowing. We are observing everything and we believe it to be true because naturally that's the function of the mind, and it's doing it naturally without intending. To know the nature of the mind, you need intelligence, the capacity to look at the mind in silent and dispassionate awareness. Most of people's activities are valueless, if not outright destructive. Dominated by desire and fear, they can do nothing good because they act from the state of imbalance. Ceasing to do evil precedes beginning to do good. Hence, the need for stopping all activities for a time, to investigate one's urges and their motives, see all that is false in one's life, purge the mind of all evil, and then only restart work, beginning with one's obvious duties. And it's so true that if you, like when I just came to India, and soon after, I guess, I did Vipassana meditation for 10 days, just in total silence. And you really understand what's important in your life and what's not, what's necessary in your life and what isn't. So your priorities become much clearer when you just stay in silence for some days. And then it's just, you get so much more clarity and the mind purifies. And also Nisargadatta says that at first you have to become sattvic, completely good, and then after that the next step is liberation. So the mind, if you are staying in quietude, the mind purifies itself and naturally you become a better person, because awareness is love and awareness cleanses the mind. Each action begets another, meaninglessly and painfully, in endless succession. The alternation of work and pause is not there. First find the immutable center where all movement takes birth, just like a wheel turns round and acts in the center and not whirling at the periphery. So here he explains, I don't know how to pronounce that word, turns round and acts in the center and not whirling at the periphery. So to find the center from which all action originates and just stay there, rather than being at the periphery of the wheel, just keeping moving all the time, doing taking action, being busy, never having time to rest, the mind being always engaged in thoughts and reacting on them. So this is staying on the periphery of the wheel, but we should get into the center, and then we can observe where all action starts, and we become the immovable center in our lives. How do I go about it in practice? Answer. Whenever a thought or emotion of desire or fear comes to your mind, just turn away from it. That's how you remain in the center rather than being on the periphery of the wheel. Must I not use effort to arrest the movements of the mind? Answer. It has nothing to do with effort. Just turn away. Look between the thoughts rather than at the thoughts. When you happen to walk in a crowd, you do not fight every man you meet. You just find your way between. I love this comparison. When we are in a crowd, we don't fight every person, we're just stepping where there is space. So that's what he advises in on our way to liberation. Just don't fight with thoughts, just stay in the gaps between thoughts, enjoy them. Turn away from your desires and fears and from the thoughts they create, and you are at once in your natural state. Again, similar advice. Just don't pay attention to the imbalances of the mind. The mind can be happy, sad, scared, excited, but you just don't pay attention to that, and then you find yourself in your natural state. Question. No question of reconditioning, changing, or eliminating the mind. Answer. Absolutely none. Leave your mind alone. That is all. Don't go along with it. After all, there is no such thing as mind apart from thoughts which come and go obeying their own laws, not yours. Thoughts come and go obeying their own laws, not yours. We are not the initiators of thoughts. When we meditate, we understand that we just get a thought. And if a person is not a meditator, they will just go along with those thoughts, take action, become upset or become excited, depending on the content of the mind. thoughts dominate you only because you are interested in them. It's exactly as Christ said, resist not evil. By resisting evil, you merely strengthen it. So when we lose, and it comes just through experience, just through living, that we understand that this life is repetitive, that after happiness comes sadness, and we start understanding this tiring duality of the mind of this world. And then when we understand that, even thoughts that are tempting or fearful no longer have a hold on us. There is nothing to renounce. Enough if you stop acquiring. To give up you must have, and to have you must take. Better don't take. It's simpler than to practice renunciation, which leads to dangerous form of spiritual pride. And again, I'm sure that if you were in ashrams and spiritual places, you saw many people who consider themselves very spiritual, but they are just all ego. So he is telling, don't start these spiritual practices of renouncing the world, because that may develop another identity for you, and we want to let go of all identities. So it's better just not to acquire more than you have. Just stop acquiring rather than getting into this formal practice of renunciation. Something prevents you from seeing that there is nothing that you need. Find it out and see its falseness. It's like having swallowed some poison and suffering from unquenchable craving for water. Instead of drinking beyond all measure, why not eliminate the poison and be free of this burning thirst? Indeed, most people always think that they don't have enough. They want to eat more and more, they want to acquire more and more money, when in fact it's just a dream. The mind thinks itself to be real, that the body wants to keep itself going, and this creates the need to always have, to acquire, to do. But that's because we are identified with this illusion, and when we stop identifying with it, then we understand we are free from all needs. We don't need anything at all. The sense I am a person in time and space is the poison. In a way, in time itself is the poison. In time, all things come to an end, and new are born to be devoured in their turn. Do not identify yourself with time. Do not ask anxiously, what next? What next? Step out of time and see it devour the world. Indeed, then, when we understand that the time destroys, eventually everything is destroyed by time, then we understand that it's painful to identify with time. So when we understand that this is just a part of the illusion, and we detach from that, it eliminates one of our miseries. There is always something to witness. If not a thing, then its absence. Witnessing is natural and no problem. The problem is excessive interest, leading to self-identification. So when we get interested in content of our thoughts, in some phenomena taking place, then we identify with that, and it becomes harder to disentangle from this matrix. Whatever you are engrossed in, you take to be real. Question. I am the only reality I know. The Sadguru is the Sanskrit term for inner, your own guru, but unfortunately it was hijacked by one false guru. I'm the only reality I know. The Sadguru is there as long as I think of him, the inner self, inner guide. What do I gain by shifting reality to him? Answer. Your loss is your gain. When the shadow is seen to be a shadow only, you stop following it. You turn round and discover the sun, which was there all the time, behind your back. So when we are praying to God, inner self, guru, this is all coming from who we really are, all the guidance. Even when some person comes external to us seemingly and starts guiding us, actually it's our own self themselves guiding us in this illusion. So here he explains that the whole world is not true. It's just a shadow. And when we turn it away and see what gives it life, what makes it possible, then we discover our true selves, the inner guru, higher self, reality, or however else you want to call it. Now the final quote. So firstly, the question: if I project the world, I should be able to change it. And the answer is, of course you can, but you must cease identifying yourself with it and go beyond. Then you have the power to destroy and recreate. And this is very often what he said in different words, that people, when Nisargadatta would say that they are the creators of the world, the people are the creators of the world, they would say, many people would say, I'm not intelligent enough, I can't create this whole world and I can't change it. And then people would say, oh, what to do? There are so many wars in the world. How do I help? And he's telling that you have to change your behavior, because you're also contributing to that war. If you don't know yourself, you don't know the mind, how can you know that you're also not contributing? And actually, we are all contributing to the wars of the world. But we can all help if we disidentify from the world and go to the source. Because when we are in the world, we are unable to change it. But when we go into the source, which is the power that creates the worlds, that's when we have the power to really make changes. So that's all for now. I hope that you enjoyed these quotes. Thank you for watching. Have a lovely day. Take care.